We'll turn now to politics. A major GOP donor network looking to break with its past tradition and support candidates in the 2024 Republican primaries. The network, created by billionaire brothers Charles and David Koch, is looking to, quote, turn the page on the past several years in an apparent rebuke of former President Trump. According to an internal memo circulated around to donors, the network believes, quote, the Republican Party is nominating bad candidates who are advocating for things that go against core American principles, and the American people are rejecting them. The group says it's seen the writing on the wall and plans on fixing things by getting involved in elections and primaries earlier to find better candidates. Quote, the loudest voice in each political party sets the tone for the entire election. In a presidential year, that's the presidential candidate. And to write a new chapter for our country, we need to turn the page on the past. So the best thing for the country would be to have a president in 2025 who represents a new chapter. The network is one of the most influential in Republican politics, having spent roughly $500 million in election races and conservative causes in 2020 alone. Joining us now, the reporter for the New York Times, Ken Vogel. He investigates the confluence of money, politics, and influence, and was part of the reporting team that broke this story. So, Ken, I'll send it to Joe, actually. Joe, this is a big deal in terms of Donald Trump. It's a first for the Koch network to get involved early, and they're making a point here.
Big deal. Really, really big deal, as Joe Biden said after the Affordable Care Act passed. Yeah, exactly. That's what he said. Yeah. Ken, fascinating story here. The Koch's very interesting. Never really cared for Donald Trump. Focused on a lot of other issues during the Trump presidency, like criminal justice reform, as you know. But talk about the process they went through to get to this point where they and their network said, enough. It reminds me a lot of 2014. Enough. We're not going over the cliff with whacked out primary candidates anymore.
Yeah, and you raise a good analogy there, Joe, to 2014. And in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, the Kochs got a lot of pressure from both the operatives in their network and the donors to consider wading into the Republican primary that year against Trump, who they saw as anathema to their own libertarian-infused political philosophy, but also the Republican Party's traditional political philosophy. And they had a lot of debate about whether they should support Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. And ultimately, disagreement within the ranks sort of kept them from jumping in then. And then they, as you correctly pointed out, they had a lot of issues with Trump during his presidency. And Charles Koch compared the choice even before his presidency between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump to choosing between a heart attack and cancer. So, you know, they have this sort of background where they don't like Trump. They got some of what they wanted from him, certainly during his presidency, including the tax reform and the nomination of conservative Supreme Court judges. But a lot of the ideas that they had about what the Republican Party should be focused on were essentially cast by the wayside during the Trump administration. So they see this as a chance to move on. They are concerned that if the Republican Party nominates Donald Trump again, that they'll lose to Joe Biden or whomever, but likely Joe Biden. And they want to avoid that because they also are opposed to the Biden administration and have lobbied against several of the Biden administration's key policy victories.
Yeah, you know, you also pointed out in the story, and I think it's important for people to understand this, that it's not easy to pigeonhole the Koch donor network, especially Charles Koch. It's not a traditional hard right Republican position. Again, a champion on criminal justice reform. He's very, by our standards that we use in political discourse, he's very progressive when it comes to immigration. He loathes the tariffs that Donald Trump put out there. There are a lot of cross currents going on in Charles Koch's political philosophy. So, yeah, he liked the tax cuts. but he hated Trump's position on immigration. He hated Trump's position on tariffs and quite a few things.
Yeah, and they also are, they're very traditionally libertarian. So, Charles Koch is against interventionism, and you have to believe would be supportive of Joe Biden's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. So it's a lot of this is about this this upcoming presidential campaign, but a lot of it is about the direction of the Republican Party going forward. And Charles Koch is getting up there in age, and you have to believe that after spearheading this donor network that has spent hundreds of millions of dollars, probably close to $2 billion overall since it sort of first came on the scene during the George W. Bush administration, trying to shape the direction of the Republican Party in American politics, and seeing that their efforts have, in the form of Trump, essentially been repudiated, that there's a little bit of like a legacy move here to try to reorient the Republican Party during this pivotal presidential campaign.
So, Ken, it's Jonathan Lemire. I mean, this would certainly be a blow to Donald Trump. But if the Koch brothers aren't going to back Trump, is there a sense as to who they do want to support? Do they have a favored candidate or two?
You could foresee a very deliberative process, like everything that the Kochs do. They try to apply sort of business management principles to their political decision making. And so I think we're a long ways away from them ultimately deciding. But there are a couple candidates who do jump out as potentially having an advantage. Number one being Ron DeSantis, just because that seems to be where a lot of the big donor energy is. And frankly, the polls show that he is the potentially the most viable challenger to Trump in a Republican presidential primary. Also, Mike Pence, former vice president, had a lot of connections in Koch world, including some operatives who remain important there and donors who remain important there. So we could potentially see those two being among the folks who would be near the top of the list that the Kochs would be evaluating.
All right, Ken Vogel of the New York Times, thank you very much for your reporting this morning. We really appreciate it.